raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
We are getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Let's go. The world getting crazy, baby, chill. Don't medicate, just meditate. You waking up now, well, baby, you hella late. Educate, look at what's going on, let it resonate, accelerate. Find your inner hunger like you never ate. Agenda is to push the hate. Separate and segregate, don't celebrate quite yet. The storm is coming, Q, for heaven's sake. Violence that they demonstrate, instigate and penetrate the values of our country. And our God is what they desecrate. My fighters ain't no featherweight, pulling out the seams of the fabric that they fabricate. They feed us lies, manipulate, intimidate through fear and force, forcing us to sit and wait till we come together, congregate, and then we liberate. Praying that you give me strength to find some love amongst the hate. Marching on the streets of blood till I see the golden gates. Troubadour, troubled souls, one of God's servants. Blades out, cut the grass till we see the serpents.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show, it stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
I know the truth is hard to swallow, just digest it. Suspected something's going on, chosen just neglected, deflected by some breaking news. Oh, we just accept it, expected just to fall in line and follow their perspective. Don't question their objectives, but I got a lot of questions. How these kids molested, but nobody's been arrested. Read it in the testament, these children are protected. So I'm fighting all these terrorists, both foreign and domestic. Refuse to be directed, lying not a sheep. Only kneel to my God, so I'm dying on my feet. Silence when we speak, but there's violence in the street. I've been rolling with the punches, I can't take it on the cheap. Nah, drink from a glass half full, I'm optimistic. People are sadistic, so vicious and malicious. Praying for assistance to overcome opposition, or I'm gonna start resisting and then I'll pray for forgiveness.
Oh, one day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show, it stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now. We need you now. Oh, we need you now. One day, one day, one day, I hope you see the truth. This puppet show, it stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. Need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. I hope everybody is doing well out there. That was Struggle Jennings and Caitlin Curtis with God, We Need You Now. Probably the best song between those two that I've ever heard, and one of my favorites. I have not played it in a very long time. I'm curious how YouTube will react to it. But actually, I reached out to Struggle Jennings a few years ago. He came back and said, brother, go ahead and play the song as much as you want. So I play it occasionally, and I love that song. So great song there. If you want to find that, if you want to listen to that song, it's God, We Need You Now on YouTube. You go out there and you just type in Struggle Jennings, and it should come up. I mean, 99.999% of the time it's going to come up. Just God, We Need You Now, Struggle Jennings. You should find that. Sorry about being late today. I'm running an hour behind schedule. It's been a busy day. I literally was home this morning, dropped the kids off, and then home this morning. Well, I was obviously home this morning. I slept in my bed. I woke up this morning, took the kids to school. I immediately went out to another town and I got some hardware and stuff like that. I'm renovating my kitchen. I'm renovating my studio. Had to get some supplies. And then on my way home, I'm like, well, I got to go let the dogs out. Came back home, let the dogs out for 5 minutes. Got back in the truck, went grocery shopping. Then I went and picked up kid number 1. Then I came back and went to another store. Then I had to go pick up 2 more kids from wrestling practice. And then I got home. I had to make dinner. And next thing I know, I'm waking up at 8 o'clock and going, oh, shit, what happened? So I must have fell asleep somewhere in there. So I apologize for that. I had a little cat nap, but that's okay. Sometimes we need a little rest. But in this time, I had a lot of time to take in some information, a lot of FaceTime with the road, and really put things together. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. There are some things that I wanted to listen to, some research that I wanted to do, some things I wanted to dive into, and then compare notes and go about this. And so tonight's show is the Sovereign Alliance. And I know there's only 2 flags on there. There's not 3. There's only the US and Russia. There's not China. And there's a reason why China's flag is not on there tonight. And we'll talk about that. It's a lot of the stuff that I talked about in the summer and in the early fall. But a lot of this is going to be going back to the beginning of the Trump administration and talking about exactly what I was saying pertaining to global homogeny, looking at Russia and the United States in the context of an alliance, even though they are operating independently, the formation of a multipolar world, the decimation of the global elite infrastructure that is happening and occurring right now, and then The next part of that is the decimation of the U.S. deep state, and all of those cards are in play right now. And it's pretty amazing because, like, you can literally see it. And I believe that there's panic in the UK, there's panic in the EU, there's panic in DC, there's panic in Beijing, because they understand what's happening right now. And Donald Trump has played a massive chess game. And right now, it's not looking good for the bad guys. So we're going to get into a lot of this tonight. And I don't really have very much news to really get into, but I'm going to go over the national security strategy, just a few different basic points. We're going to get into what's going on in Ukraine with Russia and Ukraine and the EU and the United States. We're going to talk about that point a little bit. We're going to talk about Venezuela, what happened there today specifically. Almost like someone said, hey, there's many reasons for the U.S. Navy ships to be in Venezuela. One of them is, I believe, they're sub hunting. And number two, I believe that this is an embargo, that basically U.S. Navy is there to stop illicit oil from shipping to China in the EU. Said that months ago. Now, why did I say that? Because it's pretty obvious when you start to put everything together. And so we're going to look over all of this stuff. We're going to see how this all plays in. And then Humphrey's executor. This is Trump versus Slaughter in the Supreme Court. One of the most massive decisions the Supreme Court is probably going to make in the last 100+ years. And this could absolutely be a banger. And it's looking like Trump is going to win this decision. We don't know just yet. But once this does come about, if it happens, oh my God, I'm going to explain why that matters and what authority that gives Trump and why that authority is so pertinent to decimating the deep state. So we're going to do all of that here. A few different things. Tomorrow, the live Q&A after the show. That is on our primary channels where you can get a subscription. So that is tomorrow night, live Q&A. The show will be probably a little bit later tonight, probably not as late as tonight. The reason being is my kids do have a wrestling meet tomorrow. They should be done by 6 o'clock, and I should be home by 7:30. So probably about an 8 o'clock showtime. And then, so that's tomorrow. And then after that show, we'd immediately go on Zoom and we do a live Q&A. To get on that live Q&A with myself, you can become a premium subscriber on any of our subscription platforms, x.com, socialredpill.com, redpillproject.substack.com, or redpillproject.locals.com. And more will be added in here soon once we have the ability to kind of send messages out and stuff. But those are the primary ones right now. And then tomorrow, my good friend Tammy Cuthbert-Garcia is going to be joining me for probably a co-hosting position tomorrow. So she'll be on for a little bit longer tomorrow. But today, I'm going to bring her on just for 15 minutes. There's a few things that she wants to talk to you about, but there's actually something I want to talk to her about real quick that I don't want to wait till tomorrow to talk about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this video, and I'm going to bring Tammy in the backdrop. I'm going to play this video. It's a minute and 34 seconds. And then we're going to come in and talk about this real quick, and then we're going to jump in to the Sovereign Alliance. We're going to talk about what we were just discussing right there. So let me bring this up here, and I'll be right back with Tammy.
The FDA has that is relevant to the public, any safety information. These are data reports that came in during the Biden administration where a doctor or a parent said that their kid died immediately after getting the COVID vaccine, and they believe that there was a link. So the FDA did its own investigation, and this was all during the Biden administration, but they suppressed that data. It was never made public. And so do we have a moral obligation to make that information public? I believe we do, but we need to verify the information first to make sure it's accurate. It's known, and it's been known, that young kids have died from the COVID vaccine. We're not trying to create hysteria or scare anybody out of taking any vaccine, but you've got to be honest. Young kids are at high risk of myocarditis. Older individuals are at lower risk of myocarditis from the vaccine. And we have seen the COVID shot reduce the severity of illness in older Americans. Back in 2020, at the end of Operation Warp Speed, it was a good match at the time for the virus that was circulating. There was low levels of natural immunity in the population, and it saved lives. But when it comes to mandating this vaccine today in young, healthy individuals, as the Biden administration does, we want schools to know that, well, first of all, you cannot mandate this vaccine now, given the changes that we've done. But we want people to know that it's not 1,000% safe. There have been some reports that are concerning.
Well, if you just take out the last half of it, it sounded very promising, didn't it?
First of all, hello, Josh, and
how are you?
I'm doing good. It just feels like we get an inch, and then there's this other side of it all the time. And the reason why I think that it feels that way is, as I've said a million times, I feel like it's negotiations. There's negotiations going on, and oh gosh, it just, it's so frustrating. I understand why, but Josh, I mean, I've been doing this since 2019, right? I've been doing this since 2019. And people have been texting me since COVID, okay? So, before that, I said I wasn't going to talk about vaccines when I started in 2019. I was just going to talk about natural health, even though I had my own experience with vaccines, right? My son was injured by a flu shot when he was 2. And it was life-threatening. So I had my own opinion, said I wasn't going to talk about it. 2020 rolls out and, COVID hits. And I knew that it was all going to come down to the solution was going to be a vaccine. And so since then, I have connected with families through my health text line, through my show, through interviews. And, they have admitted to 10 deaths, Josh, right? 10 deaths they have admitted to. One of which is Ernest Ramirez's son. I think another one is Sean. The boy's name is Sean. And 10 is, it's a breadcrumb, right? Of how many kids actually were killed by this novel injection, right? So we get a little bit, of acknowledgement, but I feel like we all kind of act like abused wives here. Like we get a little bit, we're like, oh, thank you,
They're acknowledging I was abused. Now take your ass back in there with him.
Exactly. It's 5 years later, 5 years later, and there's so much else going on, and I get it, but I'm trying to be grateful for the acknowledgement. And I understand that we're working, within this corporate model, constantly trying to appease the corporate model and the lobbyists and even legal ramifications. I still think, and it's a controversial opinion, but I still think that Trump must be under some kind of NDA when it comes to the vaccine. I mean, we've heard people like John Rich, say, that he's told Trump to his face, people are getting hurt by this, and still Trump won't really denounce it. He's allowing Bobby Kennedy and Marty McCary to kind of work the system. But there's something else there, and I don't know if we'll ever hear about it. Do you think?
Well, I think it's the same context as the Epstein stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that as president of the United States, and we have to look at the United States as the corporation of all corporations. It is the inflow and the outflow of all corporations, which means that he represents these corporations' voices as well, and he helps determine their bottom line. So when it comes to things that he can say or he should say or shouldn't say, there's certain things that I think he holds back on and that he doesn't go out to talk about, because number one is he doesn't want to go out and hurt an entire industry. Because I talk
it's always money with Trump. Yeah.
Well, true. But I always talk about American generalizations, is that we tend to generalize things. So, for instance, if we say that Jews rule the world, right? The Jews don't rule the world.
Gangsters.
Gangsters, mafiosos rule the world, right?
And they come in every color and creed.
And some of them have Jewish names, and maybe some of them are Jewish and have ties to Israel, but not all of them, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that we will say that in a generalization, and it's quasi-true, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's not truth. And then we'll say stuff like, all Democrats are evil. Not all Democrats are evil.
Right.
We say these types of things. So when we say that, hey, look, Trump comes out there and says, well, I'm very disappointed in the pharmaceutical companies. They did me over. They put this vaccine out there and it killed people. That would be a broad generalization that at least his people would see, and that would be a complete boycott and revolt. And then you have people not taking their medicine if they actually do need the medicine, all this type of stuff that falls out. And I think that he tries to protect that bottom line. And I'm not defending him. I want people to understand that. I'm not defending him. I'm just trying to rationalize his perspective. With the Epstein files, it's the same thing. Is that he comes out, it's a hoax. Oh, it's a nothing burger. But then you have his agents in government releasing it, getting it out there. And he's like, I'll gladly sign it. But he can't go out there because then he's got, foreign intelligence agencies that are like, well, hey, we missed it, Butler. We're going to try again now, right? So he's got to be very careful with these things.
That, and he's the king negotiator. He's always thinking about trying to maintain his relationships, possibly for the greater good. We don't know. Like, he's trying to achieve something. And it's much harder to do business with people who hate you, right? Yeah. And if you come out publicly, I try to understand it, right? But, of course, emotions get involved because we're talking about kids here. We're talking about people. And let me tell you, that's already happening. I meet with people every single day, Josh, every single day. They're done with the pharmaceutical model. Like, the trust is broken. The trust is broken not only with the pharmaceutical model, but medical doctors. People don't even, they don't want to go to the hospital. Like, people are coming to me in droves. How can I fix myself? So the trust is broken. The best thing, I just heard something from, and I couldn't find the video. So I'm assuming it's true because there was multiple people quoting her and fairly reliable sources. Apparently Whoopi Goldberg said something on The View the other day, something about how, Bobby Kennedy shouldn't be making her choices for her about her health. She doesn't want Bobby Kennedy making choices for her vaccine status and all this stuff. And I'm going, exactly.
But Admiral Levine was completely okay to do that.
Yeah. Like, these people they're eating their own tail, as I like to say. You know what I mean? Like, they're coming full circle now because we have Bobby Kennedy in a position of power. All of a sudden, you don't tell me what to do with my body. Yeah. Why can't we just leave it there? Why can't we just leave it there? Why can't you respect my decisions? I respect your decisions. And, those decisions, they affect everybody. I was just talking to somebody today about shingles. And, one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways people get shingles is through the chickenpox vaccine. It sheds. You're supposed to quarantine. You're supposed to quarantine when you get the chickenpox vaccine. You're supposed to quarantine for, I think, 7 days after you get it. But nobody does that.
Well, didn't we used to have parties about that?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
We did. Because, it was part of childhood.
Yeah. We go all.
And same with measles, right? I got measles when I was a kid. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you're too young to have gotten measles. The vaccine was out. No, I got vaccinated when I was a kid, and me and my sister gave each other measles because we're, so it's just, we have to protect each other's right to choose when it comes to what we want to do with our medical choices. And more people are realizing that,
and that's the bigger picture, though, is that I think that we're in a different time frame than 2020. The amount of people that have woken up and that are seeking alternative healthcare, alternative medicine. You have Trump eviscerating Obamacare, and he's going to defund the insurance companies from U.S. subsidies. This
Thank
is pretty
God.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And then you have HHS that's actually opening in the investigation into COVID deaths. I think that is fair. The fact that McCarty came out there and said what he said, that I don't want people to get in hysteria, but children die because of this vaccine. The fact that the government just admitted that, that's huge.
It is.
That is huge.
It is. And here's the thing, Josh, I always say this anyway, like, let the politicians do their jobs, right? You have no control over it. We have no control over it, right? But what we do have control over is our own actions. So, more and more people, not saying I'm telling people what to do, because I don't give people medical advice and I don't give people financial advice either. But let me tell you, a lot of people are tapping out of health insurance. Mm-hmm. A lot of people. And there's a lot of viral videos, about health insurance recently. I don't know if you've seen them. Doctors are making videos, in their own offices, talking about how they're getting pulled out of surgery to get approval for procedures that they want to do for their patients. So we have those videos going viral. We have parents that are just asking questions like, hey, I just had a baby and this cost me $50,000 if I have insurance. But if I don't have insurance, this costs about $6,500. What's going on here? Like, this has been going on for years, people. I've been talking about this for years. It's a scam, right? So the more the marketplace wakes up to this, Josh, the more power we have. And then we actually give the power to people like Trump, to people like Bobby Kennedy, to say, you know what? The people are behind me. Sometimes I feel like when I listen to Bobby Kennedy talk, or even Trump sometimes, I feel like they're begging us to take our power back. Like, I can't do this on my own, because then I'm the bad guy. I'm the one that's going to have to take liability if I cut this vaccine or do this. I can't do it on my own. We need the public to drive the marketplace, right? Like right now, I have a ton of people on my text line who don't want to go to the doctor, right? They don't want to, they're like, I don't want to go here. I want to get off these medications. They're starting to realize how detrimental these medications are to their health. So it's simple things. They go to the doctor and they get told, for stiffness, this is a big thing lately, stiffness, I'm getting older, I get stiff, and how can I take care of this? This pain is, I get out of bed and I'm all creaky. They go to the doctor. What is it right away? It's a prescription grade NSAID. Right away, for aches and pains. And people are asking the doctor. I talked to one lady this week who's just funny because she's like gotten an argument with her doctor and said, what, can I try a supplement or something? And the doctor told her, oh, that's just expensive, throw away your money. It's just expensive urine. Oh my gosh, Josh, if someone ever says that to me again, I think I'm going to explode. You
gotta be kidding me. A doctor actually said it to somebody?
Yes. This just creates expensive urine. So I was telling her, listen, next time you go to your doctor, you ask them if you have receptors for that pharmaceutical product. Do you have receptors for NSAIDs? Because we have receptors in our body for vitamins, for minerals, right? Specifically, when it comes to stiffness and pain, collagen is a big issue, right? We lose collagen 1% a year after the age of 25. So when you start feeling stiffer, when you start getting out of bed and you think, oh, I'm just getting older. No, you're lacking collagen, but doctors they don't know they're not trained in this way. They know very little about nutrition, okay? Unless they're the type of doctor that's independent, owns their own practice.
We got some in the chat.
Yeah. They're independent. They, they run their own practice. They don't have to answer to insurance companies. They're maybe even a little bit older. These docs, they understand what's going on. But a lot of the recently trained doctors, it's really just an assembly line. They're plugging things into their iPad and it's coming up with a protocol. And it's a pharmaceutical solution. And the people don't want that anymore. And all I'm saying, like I said, I don't give medical advice or anything. I'm just saying, trust your body. You have receptors for these things. There's certain foundational things that you need to curate health in your body. It's not just about aging. It's about lifestyle. 97% of dis-ease is lifestyle, Josh. That means it's preventable. And specifically with collagen, it's a wonderful way to supplement because it helps with mobility. It helps with gut health. It helps with so many different things. Fascia is a big part, and fascia is something that most people don't even consider when it comes to aches and pains. They consider muscles or, tendonitis, things of that nature, but they don't understand that collagen is keeping the whole thing together through your fascia. And so I talk a lot about this, of course, on my show. Fascia is the scaffolding that holds the whole body together. When you're eating a steak, Josh, and that little silvery stuff in the steak, do you ever see that? That's fascia. And we have that all through our body. You're losing it after 1% a year. It makes sense why you're feeling stiff, because that's dehydrated. It's not being hydrated with collagen production. So you end up feeling stiffer. So, a baby falls on the ground, they basically bounce. You ever know, when a baby falls down, they but they're not all beat up but, when we get older, we almost get afraid of falling down because you hear the old stories of, oh, my aunt fell down and she's in her 70s and it's kind of a downward spiral from there, right? They can't recover from that. Well, that's because the body's not making collagen anymore. So it's kind of like this downward spiral. Yeah. And so anyway, I want to invite your audience to join us in the Naturally Inspired community. So many of you are coming on over. It's a wonderful opportunity. All you have to do is make a purchase with Naturally Inspired and you get everything else for free. That's my coaching. My health text line, one-on-one coaching. You get our Tuesday night weekly wellness workshops. You get 15% off of our wellness products. And I'm featuring a collagen today that has elderberry in it. So it's great for your immune system. And it has the hyaluronic acid and collagen matrix in it to help with gut health. It helps with fascia, as I was just talking about, hydration, muscles, tendons, skin. It's a wonderful place to start, and it's buy one, get one free. So I know a lot of people in this audience that have texted me about the collagen. They're like, oh, it's a little bit expensive. I'm not sure. So I want to tell you about Barbara. Barbara's a nurse. She had achy forearms and achy feet for years, okay? She started listening to my show. She heard me talking about collagen and she thought, oh, I don't want to make the purchase, She went to the doctor. Guess what he offered her? Pills, right? NSAIDs. Yeah. Well, NSAIDs too, you lose your hair with NSAIDs. Josh, they make your hair fall out. And this isn't me saying this. Go to the drugs.com website and look at the side effects from NSAIDs. Okay?
I don't even know how to spell it.
Yeah. NSAID. So you can look them up. And there's all these side effects from it. So anyway, she was hesitant, but she's a nurse. She's on her feet all the time. So she suffered with this for years because every time she went back to her own doctor, they wanted to give her pills. She's a nurse. She didn't want to take the pills. Right? So and you would not believe the amount of medical people I talk to that are like, I would never do that. They have to do that to their patients all day, but they would never do it for their loved ones or for themselves. Anyway, she finally bit the bullet and she started in October on the collagen. Okay. It's December, Josh. She texted me today. It's gone. Years she suffered with this. Burning in her forearms, pain in her shins and ankles. She tried everything. She was trying all these different things because she didn't want to take the prescription medication. And so, October to December, and she doesn't have this issue anymore. Wow. So I would say you're going to have to pay later if you don't do it now. She suffered all that time. She tried all these other different things. When it comes to our health, people spend money on their dogs. They spend money on their kids, but they suffer themselves and they think, oh, I don't need that. I can tough it out. And it goes on too long. And what ends up happening is it becomes a bigger problem. And then you end up paying more later, So I would just encourage anybody, after I saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk about that today when I texted with her today. I'm going to talk about that tonight on Josh's show because I want to encourage people. You're worth it. You matter. You shouldn't be suffering in pain. And there are real solutions for health. So you can just head on over to redpillcellreset.com, redpillcellreset.com. That doesn't flow off the tongue very good. Head on over there. I know. Head on over there because that collagen is buy one, get one. It's the immune collagen. It never goes on sale. So I've had people that are stocking up on it, and it's only while supplies last. So if you've been thinking about the collagen, it's low molecular weight. It is the best collagen I have ever used. Helped me with mobility in my neck, has improved my skin, has improved my hair, nails, all of it. So check it out.
All right. Well, I got gray hair, so I don't know.
I was going to, are you growing that big thing out again?
I don't know if I'm going to grow it big, but it's definitely growing.
Yeah. Remember when it was really big? I forgot about that until I saw you tonight when it was really bushy. You had the Santa beard almost. Like, was that like a year ago?
It was a year ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing it again. I'm only going to do about an inch or two, though, so just not much.
Keep it tidy.
That's right. So, guys, Red Pill Cell Reset. Go visit Tammy over there, and we'll see you tomorrow, Tammy, on the show. So we'll talk to you then.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Good night, Red Pillars.
Bye. All right. Right there, Tammy, Red Pill Cell Reset, guys, if you want to visit her over there and you get in on that text line and all of the stuff that she has to offer over there. Okay, so let's transition, shift gears. Let's get into the Sovereign Alliance. And I'm not making a joke of it. I'm actually serious about this. There are clear indications that there is coordination between Trump, I don't want to say the Trump administration, Trump and Vladimir Putin. And that Xi Jinping, I believe, is involved in this. But Xi Jinping has a deep state that exists behind him. That there is a bureaucracy behind Xi Jinping, and it's much more difficult for China to transition and change into this global theater than it is for Russia and the United States. And the United States is actually working very fast towards this. So let's break this down. Number one is we go into the national security strategy that Donald Trump put out. I put out this blog on my Substack the other day. America First Reimagined, the full breakdown of the new national security strategy. This is definitely a must read if you have not checked it out yet. Absolutely free to go out there, redpillproject.substack.com. But to give you a few points that came about from this. These are quotes from the national security strategy. And I want to iterate this because this is going to tell you something, that we're not moving to an isolationist country. We're moving towards a regional homogeny in the Western Hemisphere, that we're moving towards a multipolar world. I got to move the mic closer because I'm sitting back a little bit further. I don't know if you guys can hear me well. So one part of it, our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection to national interest. And they lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, some of which are driven by outright anti-Americanism and many by a transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. That literally just called out the New World Order. That's exactly what that just said. How about this one? First and foremost, we want the continued survival and safety of the United States as an independent sovereign republic whose government secures the God-given natural rights of its citizens and prioritizes their well-being and interests. Wow. This is sounding a lot like what I talked to you about when I said that there's two competing new world orders right now. That I remember I came out on the show and I said, there's going to be a new world order. And people were like, what? I said, yeah, there's two competing new world orders. There's the commie-fascist, technocratic, oligarchical controlled, Western, Anglo-Saxon, freaking European New World Order, which they've been implementing for 100 years. And then there's the multipolar world. There is the world where countries compete at a level and retain their national sovereignty. In this, it says, we want to protect this country, its people, its territory, its economy, and its way of life from military attack and hostile foreign influence, whether espionage, predatory trade practices, drug and human trafficking, destructive propaganda, and influence operation, cultural subversion, or any other threat to our nation. This is huge. This is the first time that we've had our government come out and actually, number one, say that these things are very, very real and happening, but then say that we don't want this and we're going to administer our national security policies around ensuring that we protect Americans. Next, we want to maintain the United States' unrivaled soft power through which we exercise positive influence throughout the world that furthers our interests. That right there is a tagline for a multipolar world. And I love this one. The United States will unapologetically protect our own sovereignty. This includes preventing its erosion by transnational and international organizations. Attempts by foreign powers or entities to censor our discourse or curtail our citizens' free speech rights, lobbying and influence operations that seek to steer our policies or involve us in foreign conflicts, and the cynical manipulation of our immigration system to build up voting blocs loyal to foreign interests within our country. The United States will chart our own course in the world and determine our own destiny, free of outside interference. I want to point out one part here, because I still hear people out there saying that Donald Trump is owned by Israel and Israel controls. No, I'm telling you, we've already laid this out. He's got them cornered. But there's one line in here that's specifically directed towards Israel. Listen to this. So, or curtail our citizens' free speech rights, lobbying and influence operations that seek to steer our policies or involve us in foreign conflicts, and the cynical manipulation of our immigration system. That's obviously others, but right there, lobbying and influence operations that seek to steer our policies or influence us into foreign conflicts. That's Israel. This was a banger, and I've been racking my head about it because it's something that is completely different from the first Trump administration to this Trump administration. So we can see that there's something definitely different. It's felt like the Trump administration has been dragging their feet over the periods of time, that they're giving us little crumbs here and there, but nothing's really happening. Well, I think there's a reason for that. When you start to look at the global infrastructure, and what I mean by that is, I'm not talking about the occult satanic lines and the global cabal and all that stuff. I'm just looking at a very vanilla, generic perspective. What you have is you have global elites. These global elites, billionaires, trillionaires, financiers, bankers, royal dynasties, power players, whatever. They corroborate together. They use their money, power, and influence to create this substructure of organizations. This is the Council of Foreign Relations. This is the World Economic Forum. This is the Trilateral Commission. This is the George Soros Open Society Foundations. This is Arabella Advisors. This is the think tanks. This is the spanning out from the United Nations and in the United States of America and into various different governments. This is government contracting companies. This is the military industrial complex. This is large corporate conglomerates that have coalesced into power broker positions because of their influence over government. Okay? I want you to understand that, because that line right there that we just talked about, that is the real power mechanism that rules and dominates the world, that moves the world day in and day out. And in line with that is the central banking cartel, is the banking cartels. All right? From there, these influence governments. They got politicians in their back pocket. They influence governments. Well, once they have the politicians in their back pocket, they start to trickle down their people into the government, but they don't trickle them down into the White House, into the presidency, or a 4-year position. They have the people that they're influencing in the White House, in Congress, and in Senate position these people in the bureaucracy, position these people into basically positions that you've never heard of, unfireable positions, SCS, senior executive staff, these types of things. That way, they just continuously revolve around government per administration, and they're never gone, and they ensure that the integrity of that system remains in place. Remember, I talked about this, that Congress right now is protecting the system. It appears that Trump is protecting the system with the Epstein files. That bureaucracy, that is the deep state. The deep state operates hand in hand with something known as the administrative state. A lot of the aspects of the administrative state, they have deep state infiltrators all within this infrastructure, okay? These all exist over the peoples and smaller businesses and corporations that don't have power and influence. And that rules the world. This is the system that is operated. Now you're saying, well, Josh, what about illicit crime and activities? Go back up to that NGO and org level. If you go back up to that NGO and org level, there's a reason why it's integrated with the financial systems. See, what you have is you have illicit money flowing in to these NGOs, NPOs, family offices, organizations, political donations. You have shell companies, and money moves from one point to another point, and then gets put into structured investments. And then those investments pay out interest, and then those people get rich off of that money that has now been cleaned. Well, how does this work? Well, go ask Jeffrey Epstein, because that's literally what Jeffrey Epstein did for the intelligence apparatus. And you say, well, how does the intelligence apparatus fit into this? The intelligence apparatus is this upper line above the government. So when people say the CIA control the world, they're CIA proper. And the CIA proper, John Ratcliffe doesn't control the intelligence of the world. The second two in charge underneath John Ratcliffe don't control it. There isn't some senior, operative at the CIA that controls it. What we're talking about here is we are talking about the NGOs, the intelligence contractors, the intelligence industrial complex that is formulated around them. Ask yourself why. There's various different government contractors around the world that work within the intelligence arena. And they don't just have deals with the NSA and the CIA. They have deals with the NSA, the CIA, the Mossad, MSS. They have deals with MI6. They have deals with French intelligence. That's your intelligence apparatus. And all of this at this middle structure works hand in hand, okay, to bring about black budget money, to clean this money. Epstein was simply one of these people. He was a financier that was put in positions of power over, he was basically a financial handler for illicit crime, for people who are worth billions of dollars, had massive amounts of power, who are running drugs, running money, and running people, or running drugs, money, drugs, guns, and people. And Epstein would flow that money in. He would clean the money. He would put it through the system, and then he would take it back out and give it back to them. That's how they clean money. So when we start to look how this system works, it's highly integrated. So you can't just start dismantling. Like, let's assume Donald Trump came in January and said, I'm firing the deep state. And he goes in there and he fires all these government employees. He fires all the senior executive staff. So he starts firing all these people he believes to be deep state. The moment that happens, 100 new ones come up and get placed in the positions of power. Doesn't work. Well, then he says, well, you know, we're gonna vote out the bad politicians that are compromised. New politicians come in, they get compromised. Well, that doesn't work. We're gonna shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. Well, great, you shattered the CIA into 1,000 pieces, and now the same intelligence industrial complex is just now working with 17 intelligence agencies and not 18. Doesn't work. So what is the point of weakness in this globalist network that begins to unravel its power and control structure? Well, go back up to that midline level, right above the governments, orgs, NGOs, NPOs, think tanks, the military industrial complex, the intelligence industrial complex, the financiers, the banking cartels. It's money. It literally is the money that ties everything together. If they cannot move illicit money and clean it through their traditional networks, if NGOs are ousted as directly associated with foreign terrorist organizations, if these NGOs, NPOs, and so forth are eradicated from taking in federal money. What I mean by that is USAID. We give, $1 billion to Guatemala. Guatemala doesn't see any of that freaking money. That money goes directly to NGOs and NPOs and various different think tanks, which divvy that money up, and Guatemala might see 3 or 4% of that money. The Trump administration, Marco Rubio, State Department, last week came out and said that we're no longer going to give U.S. aid or aid money to countries that are going to give it to NGOs. We're going to give it directly to the countries, and we're going to ensure that there's no NGO involvement. Why is he doing that? Because that's that top line infrastructure. You defund this whole entire system. Well, what's another way of doing that? The illicit drug trade, human trafficking trade, arms trade. That is defunding their black budgets. You take down their financial infrastructure. Well, what is their primary source of financial infrastructure? It's the central banking cartels. Over the last 4 years prior to Donald Trump coming in, you had the BRICS nations rising up, and they developed a whole new platform that was meant to replace the SWIFT system because Russia got kicked out of SWIFT. And they did it with CBDCs. They did it with China and the Wong, the digital Wong. And don't get me wrong, China is 100% globalist aligned, and we can see that. But what Russia was trying to do is bring about a gold-backed ruble and to basically allow commoditable trade of their currencies internationally so they could go out there and people could pay with Wong to buy oil from Russia. And it didn't have to go off the backing of the U.S. dollar anymore. Well, they were very successful in this. Russia has proven one thing over the last 4 years, that U.S. sanctions do not work when countries decide to agree and work together. That was the whole point of BRICS. If you want to take BRICS out to the side for a minute and look at it to see what it is simply a system of a network of countries who were sick and tired of the Western homogeny utilizing financial sanctions and military brute force against them for the last 80 years. That's simply what the BRICS nations were. The BRICS nations as well created a whole interexchange of how money operates to trade amongst themselves. They're creating a whole new trading environment globally. Now, China during this whole time was developing out through their 100-year plan, their Silk Road Initiative, what known as the Belt and Roads Initiative. Up until January of 2025, the Belt and Roads Initiative was taking over the world. The United States was not in a very good position. Technologically, we would have been surpassed over the next 5 years. Economically, we had already been surpassed by just global GDP growth. When you start to look at the Belt and Roads Initiatives, we were losing territory of influence. Territory of influence is ports of call, shipping, back and forth, control of resources, controls of food and water. China was dominating in this arena. Over the course of the last 12 months, the Trump administration has completely annihilated the Belt and Roads Initiative in two or three main regions. Africa has really kind of been put on hold. But the two main regions are the Middle East and South America. Africa, the northern part, has been relieved of a lot of this, but there are still ongoing conflicts. We're seeing this right now with the various different wars that are going on between various different countries. These are just extensions of proxy wars between the U.S. and China. But primarily, when we start to look at the Middle East, well, what happened there? You have Israel, which goes into a war conflict with Iran. Iran is a big player in this game. Iran was corroborating directly with China on the Belt and Roads Initiative. Iran was allowing for a transnational railroad to stretch from China into Europe through Iran, which would have benefited Iran massively over this period of time. That railroad is no longer being built right now. There were various different collaborative port agreements between Iran and China. Those got sunk, and India actually took over that role. That occurred because of what Trump did in interfering with the Iran-Israel conflict. Now, Israel was moving towards a regime change in Iran. I think Trump saved Khamenei. I don't give a fuck what it is. Ayatollah Khamenei, okay? Trump saved him, and he did it as a point of respect for that leader. He did this through back channels. We know this. You have the General Army Staff in Pakistan, who visited Donald Trump the day before the U.S. B-2 bombers bombed the nuclear facilities in Iran. Iran comes out a day after it happened and said, we were given 24-hour notice. We moved all civilians out of the area. Why? Donald Trump wanted limited casualties. He didn't want any casualties. Iran launches a retaliatory strike on a military base in Qatar on the United States, and they miss by miles. And the U.S. was told hours ahead of time that it was going to happen. That's a point of mutual hidden respect, that back channels are open and there's communication going on. Now, that scares the living shit out of what we would call the deep state infrastructure, Obama and those types, because they already had deals to where Iran becomes the new boogeyman, a superpower boogeyman in the world with nuclear power that dominates the Middle Eastern region, completely destabilizes it, and allows their foreign terrorist organizations, their various different radical Islamic organizations, to overrun Israel, to take over the Middle East and spread throughout all of Europe. This was part of their globalist agenda and their globalist plan. That has since been thwarted. You have the influence of Israel, and people are like, well, Israel rules the world. No, Israel doesn't rule the world. And I'll tell you this. The United States has done 3 major defense cooperation deals, allied deals in the Middle East: Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. The United States is going in there. Donald Trump is leading the board of directors going into Gaza and allowing Gaza to be rebuilt and modernized and westernized. And I know people are like, they're just going to build hotels there. Yeah. Syria. They're westernizing Syria. So you get Qatar, Saudi Arabia buys $100 billion worth of U.S. armament, becomes a U.S. ally. Qatar Defense Cooperation Agreement, UAE Defense Cooperation Agreement, Turkey Defense Cooperation Agreement, NATO ally, Egypt Defense Cooperation Agreement. All of those nations joined 32 other nations in a Council of Islamic Republics against Israel and their genocide in Gaza. Trump is going in, rebuilding Gaza, keeping Israel out of the matter. We haven't seen really anything happen with that. It kind of died down, went away. But why is that so important? Syria and Gaza, 2 main points here. The moment Western money begins to flow into Gaza and Syria and build infrastructure, build hotels, build buildings, build out commerce, you won't see bombs drop. You won't see radical fundamental terrorists taking over those areas, because the money that is going to be invested in those areas is coming from Qatar. It's coming from Saudi Arabia. It's coming from Western financiers in the United States of America. And here's the thing, is those people with that massive amount of power, they don't let bombs drop on their towns. They don't let bombs drop on their cities. In other words, Donald Trump has placed the blueprint for Middle East peace by westernization and modernization. And it's not even really westernization. It's still Islamic Middle East. Israel, Middle East, Christian Middle East, but what they're doing is they're going to build out a massive infrastructure in these countries that were once destabilized. And that massive infrastructure will be protected by its financiers and its investors, of which no bombs are going to drop. So this is stabilization in the Middle East. But one thing that it did do is it kicked China's influence out. One of the results of Iran-Israel conflict, when Donald Trump went there and ended it, there is backdoor negotiations between Iran and Donald Trump. Well, what was discussed in that? It's that you are going to cut off China from oil whenever we tell you to cut off China from oil, or there will be more strikes coming into Iran, that you are going to increase the amount of price that you are charging for oil to China more towards the value of market value, because the U.S. is a big energy distributor now, and you're hurting our bottom dollar. That was one of the key points that happened in that backdoor meeting. China made a deal with Saudi Arabia to get oil from OPEC and from the open markets. Well, Saudi Arabia, in the context of a defense alliance, is aligned with the United States of America. So if war ever broke out between the United States and China, Saudi Arabia cuts off all oil. Now you'll have Iran that cuts off all oil, because that'll be one of the top targets of the United States of America in engagement with China. Well, where's the other place that China gets 85% of its oil? Venezuela. Well, Venezuela and Russia. Okay. We'll get into the Russia-Ukraine part here in a second, because that's like part 2 of all of this. Man, I got to take a sip here. Hold on a second. All right, let's get into Venezuela for a second. Holy shit. Man, I talk too much sometimes. All right. I haven't even looked over here at any of the news, my notes, or anything. There's a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to go through. So Venezuela, how does this play into it? Well, number one is Venezuela has been sanctioned by the United States, by the first Trump administration. What happened, though, in 2019, there was an agreement with Chevron, the oil company Chevron. And a lot of the oil and gas that left Venezuela through Chevron, it went to 2 places primarily. Well, in 2019, it went to 3 places. Went to the United States southern area, the United States, Texas for refinement. It went to Europe, Netherlands, France, so forth. And went to China. When the Trump administration came in January, one of the first things they did is they canceled the Chevron agreement with Venezuela. They told Chevron, you can no longer do business with Venezuela. Now, why did they do that? If you start looking at all the other moves that they're doing, Iran, Russia, China, Venezuela, they went in there, shut off Chevron from doing business with Venezuela. At that point in time, the majority of the oil being purchased was for the European Union, where 80% of the Europe's oil was coming in from Venezuela under Chevron. BP had tried to make multiple strides to get their positions within Venezuela. You have Maria Machado, who is getting the Nobel Peace Prize today in Oslo, who is nothing more than a puppet for Chevron, who wants to privatize Venezuelan oil and bring in BP and bring in Chevron and allow them to have at it on Venezuelan oil. I don't like her. I don't think that she's a good fit. Definitely MI6-y, Mossad-y, and CIA to me. All right. So what do you see happen? Donald Trump shuts off European, EU, and Chinese oil. China goes under the radar and starts bringing in its oil from Venezuela, but under the radar through basically illicit trafficking, utilizing kind of proxy vessels that are flagged maybe in Malaysia, going into Brazil and uploading Venezuelan oil and then going back out to sea. So when the U.S. Navy started to go out in this region, and I started looking at the deployment skirts where they were going on their deployments, I said, oh, there's multiple reasons for what they're doing, ASW operations, anti-submarine warfare, but also they are producing an embargo on illicit oil activity. And today, what happened? The skipper, a Iranian vessel, was flagged with Venezuelan oil, most likely moving to China or Europe, because that's what they do. That's how they move this cheap oil. And see, Donald Trump offered both China and Europe an oil deal. There was a trade deficit. There was a $340 billion trade deficit with Europe. He went in there and said, why don't you just buy $340 billion of U.S. energy? And we'll call it even. And Europe said no. He goes to China. Why don't you buy $340 billion of U.S. energy? China has yet to respond to that. So there's an underlining factor when we start to look at the world. Energy. Energy is a huge part of this. And I've said this since the beginning. Resource allocation. Resource allocation is the number one priority of the Trump administration. We can get into the technological aspect, artificial intelligence, blockchain, massive technological infrastructure that has to be built out. That this is so critically important. But at the other part of it, it's the war of attrition that China is not going to stop. China is going to increase their GDP. China is going to increase technologically. China already has highly advanced technology right now. They are a massive competitor to the United States of America. The two big boys on the block right now are China and the United States of America. There's no other country that is even in the same theater when it comes to warfare as China and the United States of America. At some point in time, we've heard our military talk about this, the U.S. and China are going to come into conflict. Well, how does the United States win that if China is allied with Russia? How does the United States win that if China can get their energy from Venezuela, from Iran, from Russia, from Saudi Arabia? If China can produce embargoes on Taiwan and cut off the chipsets? Right now, China only has about 100 days of what we would consider to be a strategic petroleum reserve. That's not including all civilian operations of cars and stuff like that. So this is only military operations. Well, that's the thing about China, is that at war, all of China becomes a military operation. China doesn't have natural gas or oil resources within its land and territory. If it did, the world would be fucked. Donald Trump knows this, and what he's utilizing is geopolitics and economic warfare, unrestricted warfare, if you want to call it that, to basically get China in line. He's not trying to defeat China. He's not trying to hurt China. He's not trying to crush China or have a regime change in China. All he's trying to do is say, hey, there's a better way to do things. Let's all come out with an even footing on the global stage, and we can all work within our regional blocks, a multipolar world. And China was like, nope, not happening. So Donald Trump's like, okay, boom, Iran. Boom, deal with Saudi Arabia. Just knocked out that strategic footing that China had there. And China's like, hey, Donald Trump goes into Africa, starts taking over mineral and resource deals in Africa, starts talking about Greenland and northern Canada. This scares China. China's already in the Arctic, going out there and mining oil. The United States goes up there, that's going to be a conflict. Trump goes back. He says again, hey, we can talk and negotiate. China says no. He raises tariffs on them. Embarrasses the shit out of Xi Jinping globally, to the point where rumors were circulating within China over the summer that Xi Jinping had taken over all the duties and responsibilities of Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping was just a figurehead, and that the PLA held the real control. Towards the end of the summer, we see an actual firing by Xi Jinping, another coup within the PLA, a firing of a massive amount of generals, where it appears that Xi Jinping took back that power that was being organized against him. In other words, there is a deep state still active within China that is organizing around Xi Jinping and doing their own thing. With that being said, as we come full circle, because China eventually came to the trade negotiation table and stabilized. They stabilized trade negotiations with the United States up until a few months ago, and then it happened again. We restabilized. But all of these positions marked at various parts where Trump went out and flexed his powers on energy and resources around the world. But see, it's not only China that is getting the shit end. China is just being neutralized. As in, Donald Trump is going out there and globally aligning the United States of America with the assets, the resources, and the energy to stop China's massive progression so it exceeds ours. That's simply what he's doing. He's just ensuring that China doesn't skyrocket above us because they have a monopoly on energy and resources. He's ensuring that we stay a pace ahead of China by these deals. Genius. On the other end, the moves that Donald Trump has made have completely dismantled what I would call the globalist cabalic infrastructure. This is what I call the old guard. This is the European bloodlines, the European bankers. This is the old aristocracy that has ruled and dominated. The Anglo-American connection for the longest time, utilize America as its puppet. As Promethean Action would say, that, you know, the crown controls the United States of America and has been in a fight with, you know, patriots for the longest time to control the United States of America, but they've controlled us through foreign policy. They controlled us through NATO. Well, if you start looking at this new national security strategy, it removes them around. It starts to move that out of the position. It basically tells Europe that, hey, by 2027, you better get your shit together because we're not paying for NATO anymore. Like, it's on you. You guys better, like, right now, there is a Department of War. Sorry, I keep on saying Department of Defense. There's a Department of War assessment that basically stated that Europe right now has the capability to fund their own military, NATO, everything in excess of what Russia is currently funding their operations. In other words, Europe does not need the United States of America anymore within NATO. And after the Warsaw Pact collapsed, NATO was supposed to be gone. That's what Reagan promised Gorbachev. It never happened. NATO instead expanded. And so NATO began to expand into Russian borders. Well, this culminated in 2014. Something interesting happened in 2014. That's when the Maidan Revolution, the Maidan Massacre happened in Ukraine, when the Central Intelligence Agency under John Brennan, financed through Eric Ciccamorella, John Brennan's protege, allowed a color revolution to occur in Ukraine, topple that government, and put in, remove Yanukovych, who was pro-Moscow, who was going to stay within the Minsk agreements, was pro-Moscow, okay with the Minsk agreements, but he was pro-Moscow, and they didn't like this. So they removed him. They bring in Poroshenko, and Poroshenko does what? He immediately begins bringing in NGOs. Now, this was one of the key and clutch parts about the globalists, because Ukrainian banks are kind of funny banks. You've heard of like Swiss bank accounts, Ukrainian bank accounts. You don't put your money in. But what's going on is the Ukraine would go out there through Poroshenko and they would take out an IMF loan for $20 billion that is now debt onto the Ukrainian people. They'd put it into a branch of the Bank of Ukraine. 3 months later, that bank would dissolve and go away, and that money would disperse, and the Ukrainian people were on the board for it. Massive money laundering. But you had these oligarchs that came in and then began to centralize and control all the resources. Well, that was okay with Russia for a little while until NATO began to expand, and this comes into 2016. And you got to remember, Crimea and parts of the Donbass were during that time when Russia said, hey, you're trying to color revolution this one part. No, we control these areas. And NATO said, no, we're pushing in. The United States is through the color revolution. Russia goes out there, takes back Crimea, right? Freshwater port. Key. The next part of this, 2016, Hillary Clinton's running for president. What does she come out and start saying? We're going to put, I think it was Patriot missile systems in Ukraine, in Poland, on the border of Russia to protect ourselves against Iran. And Putin's like, if you do that, we're going to war. And Hillary Clinton wasn't even president. She was running for president. And she says, no, we're going to do that. That's what's going to happen. And if you don't like it, I don't care. And that's when Vladimir Putin left the nuclear proliferation agreement in early 2016. At the same time, George Soros, through the Open Society Foundation, in collaboration with MI6 and London bankers, are financing influence operations against Donald Trump through Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and Democrats to ensure that Hillary Clinton wins this election. And if she loses, that they have a plan and position in place to remove Donald Trump because he's such a threat to their global homogeny, to their new world order, which was supposed to take place the last 8 years of it and begin in 2016. We know how this turned out. The 2016 election was attempted to be stolen. but something happened. 9 p.m. on election night 2016. Hand and foot, back and forth. Then all of a sudden, Trump wins. From what I got is that there were servers, much like the Belgrade servers in Serbia that you've heard about during the 2020, 2024 elections, probably the 2018 election, is there was a server from a cybersecurity company the DNC had on contract by the name of CrowdStrike that was in a company in eastern Ukraine, okay, known as Burisma, which on the board of directors of Burisma was Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, Chris Hines, John Kerry's stepson. And that server was running what we know of as the Hammer and Scorecard software to steal the election for Hillary Clinton. But at 9 p.m., that server got shut down by Russia, by Vladimir Putin on his order. We learned more about this in 2018 with the perfect phone call with Donald Trump and Zelensky, Ukraine's new president, where Donald Trump says, hey, you have a server, Burisma, CrowdStrike. I'd like to have my DOJ take a look at this. That was the one key point of why Eric Ciccarella and Alexander Vindman filed their whistleblower complaints through Adam Schiff. That one point right there. They didn't want Trump to get that server because they knew what was on it. Well, obviously, they go out there. They steal the 2018 midterms, primarily Attorney General, Secretary of State, state governors, so they could cover up the switcheroo that was going to happen during COVID. 2020 comes in. They steal the 2020 election. We know this. This is all coming out right now. There's multiple different points of scenario with the 2020 election. We know this. You have a lot of contention that's happening from Patrick Byrne's story to Emerald and Lara Logan and Gary Bernstein and Ralph Palazzi and all these people, CIA affiliated. It's information. Stop looking at the people and the emotion. It's information. Take the information for what it is, put it together with what you know, right? What we see is that there was a global conspiracy in line with intelligence agencies all over the world, funding through illicit operations, NGOs, dark money. George Soros' networks connected to the London bankers, connected to MI6 and the CIA, aligned with Iran and Venezuela, utilizing a software called Smartmatic, allowing that Smartmatic software to be spread out through various different other voter systems through deals that were made through a guy by the name of Mark Malik Brown, starting in 2014 to 2020 when he was CEO of Smartmatic, as well as a senior executive of the Open Society Foundations with George Soros. So this isn't like one single thing. This isn't the CIA did it, or MI6 did it, or Britain, UK did it, or Keir Starmer is guilty, or George Soros is the mastermind. No. This is a collaborative effort. There is multiple points. And this is why it's so difficult to dismantle. This is why it's so difficult to investigate. Because when you start to unravel all of those points, you start incurring on war because of national security concerns of who gets unveiled within this. Sometimes I just got to relax for a second. Okay. So we're still on Ukraine. We're going to come back in here in a second. I got to refresh my screen real quick. 1 second. I got to take a sip. All right. No links in chat. What do you mean no links in chat? What links you looking for? Hold on. Let me go find out what you guys are talking about. Mega nuke. What do you mean? Oh, no. Oh, he's telling people no links in chat. Okay. Let me get this one ad read out real quick. And then we're going to continue. And if there's one Christmas gift you want to get me, this will be it. All right. What do you give someone who already has everything? You give them the sound of the perfect sear. Head to mychicagosteak.com/rumble, code RUMBLE. Chicago Steak Company, top 2% of beef in America, USDA prime and premium Angus, hand cut by master butchers, the kind of marbling that hits a hot pan and fills the whole house with that smell. That buttery meat goodness, you know the one. Spend $229 on any holiday order, and your gift arrives at your loved one's door with 6 free petite ribeyes plus free shipping. That's $240 in premium steak, absolutely free. Then there's the unboxing, a black and gold gift box worth unwrapping, packed with dry ice, smoke rolling out when they crack it open. Christmas morning energy. It's not just another sweater, it's dinner that becomes a memory. mychicagosteak.com/rumble, code RUMBLE. RUMBLE. All right. Appreciate you bearing with me through all that. I haven't even started any of this. So they steal the 2020 election. Then Joe Biden comes in. Soon after Joe Biden comes in, Russia makes a move on Ukraine on a special military operation. Now, do I believe that Russia was just trying to do a special military operation? I think that Russia believed they could go into Ukraine and probably seize and secure Ukraine fairly fast because of the lack of military prowess. They were much more advanced military. And I think that ultimately failed because one of the things they suspected is that NATO would react almost instantly. And that's exactly what happened. And this came about for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is there was talk about Ukraine entering into the European Union. There was talk about Ukraine wanting to join the NATO, and Russia just couldn't allow this to happen. Now, obviously, sanctions came about from Russia, and Russia basically got cut off from the economic system. We talked about all that. The main financier right now that is driving Russia just happens to be China purchasing Russian oil. And so this is why Donald Trump said 2 weeks ago that if China really cared about ending the Ukraine war, they would just stop buying Russian oil. They can end it any day. Now, I find it interesting because China is also economically advantaged within Europe. China's investing massive amounts, billions upon billions of dollars throughout Europe, and co-sponsoring various different agreements with the European Union. So you have a proxy war between the US, Russia, NATO, Russia, in Ukraine that is being financed on both ends by China. Does that kind of sum all that up? Russia has an end game. And I don't think Russia was originally going to do this, but now seeing the military buildup of NATO and what NATO is doing, even though the national security strategy for the Trump administration came out and Russia agrees with it and likes it and understands that the United States is going to back off and basically leave NATO at some point in time, or at least defund it to necessary levels to where the European Union and other European countries have to basically fund it themselves. Russia understands this as a strategic counterpoint to win this war once and for all. Russia is going to take Odessa. Odessa is the one warm water port into the Black Sea that Ukraine has. It is literally their economic golden child. I'm going to read my notes over. If Russia captures Odessa, the consequences are seismic. Russia gains control of the Danube Delta, the northern Black Sea shipping corridors, grain export routes, energy choke points, military naval dominance. This is the first time Russia becomes unchallenged Black Sea power since the time of Catherine the Great. Moldova and Romania become exposed. Russia links Transnistria. Moldova becomes indefensible. Romania becomes NATO's new frontline state. U.S. bases sit directly opposite Russian-controlled coastline right now. Turkey shifts towards Moscow. Turkey controls the Bosporus, but Russia would control the entire sea behind it. You got to remember, Turkey and Russia are good friends. Erdogan and Putin are on really good terms. And even though Turkey is in NATO, Turkey's always been very, very pro-Kremlin. NATO's credibility begins to implode. Europe said Russia must not expand. If Russia takes Odessa, NATO looks weak. EU unity fractures. Eastern Europe panics. Western Europe seeks deals. The new Iron Curtain begins to form. Baltics, Poland, Romania, Black Sea. China interprets this as Western decline or European decline. Beijing sees that the U.S. is pulling out and no longer wants anything to do with this proxy war. That NATO is overstretched. Europe is divided. And the Western homogeny unity is fragile and fracturing. This reinforces China's belief that great powers can take what they want. And so this means that Taiwan potentially comes into the open, but China begins to move into a lot of Europe. And I think that this is one of the key points there. You have global multipolarity accelerates. Russia is going to win this regional war. There's no ifs, ands, or Russia's already won. So if Russia's already won, they've taken over the Donbass. They've taken over Mariupol. They're headed towards Odessa next. And when they take Odessa, it is only a matter of time before Ukraine collapses. Ukraine then becomes nothing more than a European Union surrogate state that is completely dependent upon European aid for survival. All of their economic model collapses the moment Putin takes over Odessa. And Putin knows this. So last week I said Trump has already green-lit Putin to end it. This week we've already seen Donald Trump come out there and say what? He says Zelensky didn't even read the agreement. And the agreement was to give up territory in the Donbass, in Donetsk, in Donbass. And the people within Zelensky's cabinet are like, yeah, it's already Russian. It's basically ethnically Russian already. Just let them have it. Putin goes and meets with Keir Starmer and Merz in Europe. And they whisper in his ear and said, no, don't do that. You can win this war. We will finance it. Zelensky comes back out and says, no deals. We're not giving up no territory. It's not in our constitution. And Putin says, okay, you want to play that game? Trump greenlit Putin with that. How do we know this? Last week, Wyckoff, Kushner in Russia talking with Vladimir Putin directly. At the same time, China, second premier, is with Lazarov, the foreign minister. All three of those countries met, and they all understood what was coming next. Because here's the one part that I don't think people see with the collapse of Odessa falling into Russia. The moment Russia controls the Black Sea, the naval port of the Black Sea, they control all grain and energy shipments in and around those regions, Europe's done. Europe becomes basically defenseless to Russia. So that could bring about an engagement of war. But one of the things that it does is it fractures the global economic power structure that is formulated in Europe for almost a century. So that's a key to understand. So then we talked about, obviously, Venezuela. So I want you to see this in context. Economically, massive amounts of European imports come from Ukraine, the Black Sea, this whole area. Putin would control Europe simply by controlling that one military port with the Russian Navy. It would probably promulgate war with NATO, but the United States is not going to get involved. So therefore, Europe wouldn't go to war with Russia. They can't. They can't afford it. They're bankrupt. Now you take in the context, all the stuff that I've talked about economically, what Trump's done, renegotiated the world. Went out there, renegotiated all these various different deals, got the trade deficit down to almost zero, renegotiated deals all throughout Europe. Europe didn't want to play ball with Trump. They didn't want to renegotiate them. Now, why is that so important? Once you begin to understand how the global financial infrastructure actually operates, you begin to realize how much of a fucking scam it actually is. For instance, central banks basically provide overnight liquidity to large financial institutions so that the supply chain can continue to run and operate. If you have $1 billion of crude oil sitting in Saudi Arabia that needs to make its way to the east coast of the United States of America and then get shipped over to Texas and then sent out to the pumps, Saudi Arabia wants to get paid today, not a year down the road. So who pays for that? How do the corporations come up with that $1 billion now? They borrow it on short-term interest loans from the central banks, large financial institutions and central banks. They loan them the money. They ship the goods and services to the United States, and it gets brought by railroad and semi-truck to Texas. It gets refined over in Texas, and then it gets distributed by railroad car and semi-truck to the pumps to where now they can put profitability into it and make money off of it. That's how the global supply system operates. Well, due to fiat currencies and inflation and manipulated monetary policy and manipulated markets around the world, that system has been degrading slowly over time, which has caused the globalists to negotiate subsidies within the system. Well, guess who was paying the subsidies? The United States of America was paying the subsidies, whether it was foreign aid or whether it was horrible trade deals that were made with these countries to where the United States was producing an immediate deficit in trade. So when Donald Trump went out there and started to renegotiate the world, bringing the U.S. deficit down, going out there and basically reversing these old world deals with all these countries, including European nations, the central banks noticed. The central banks got scared because the central banks began to realize that their system, it can't survive without that subsidization coming from borrowed money. Because that's the scam. It's just borrowed money flowing into borrowed money, flowing into borrowed money. It's just a credit printing machine just flowing and circulating. But you need that credit flowing machine to continue. And you cannot have exasperated debt that overtakes it because then you got hyperinflation. Right now, we have 8 different countries in the world that are about to crumble economically because of the system. And Donald Trump is the one bringing it down. But at the same time, Donald Trump is reorganized a new economic system that is rising up in parallel with this system. Sovereign wealth fund, asset, gold, and resource-backed economic model to where you have stablecoin digital currencies, US dollar, that we dependent and backed upon the sovereign wealth fund, strategic Bitcoin reserve, and asset-backed currencies. He's reestablishing trade negotiations with all these countries. He's got the strongest military in the world. He's going out there and he's securing resources all around the world that therefore go in and back up the buying power of the US dollar. So Russia, if they take Odessa, this is the end of the EU. That's how bad it's going to hurt economically. But then on the other end in Venezuela, by Trump pulling the GL-41 Chevron license, it cuts Maduro's last legal revenue stream, okay? Ends Europe's heavy oil loophole. Europe was funneling illicit oil out of Venezuela into Europe. Denies China discounted rates. China no longer has the ability to do the illicit oil under sanctions. It collapses the PDVSA. So when we begin to think about this, Europe's oil back door is slammed shut. China's footprint throughout South and Latin America is closed down. We took over the Panama Canal. We ejected China out of Colombia. We're ejecting them out of Ecuador and Peru, now out of Venezuela. Brazil, we just did mineral deals with Brazil. Trump and I'm forgetting his name, Yulu or whatever his name is, are on good terms. The national security strategy comes out and talks about how the United States of America is going to dominate regional homogeny. As in, the Western Hemisphere is ours. We're declaring it ours. We're the big boy in the block. Everybody get in line. You're not doing business with China. You're not doing business with Russia. You're doing business with us. And here's the thing. Russia is doing the same thing in Europe. China is going to do the same thing in Asia. As in, you're going to have three primary blocks globally that are going to be a multipolar world, that are going to be sovereign nations working together for the progression of the regional areas of power. Europe basically gets squeezed out. So why is this so important? What does this all mean to everything that we've talked about? So what you're seeing when I described that system, the global elites, the EU, the UN, the UK, all of these guys, the old aristocracy, the old guard, the London bankers, that system is being eradicated globally. China and Russia and BRICS nations already have a new system. The United States right now is collapsing and crashing that system while building a parallel system in its place. In other words, the old financial dynasty out of Europe is on its way out. It's going to collapse. That was the funding mechanism that funneled all of that illicit money from drug, gun running, human trafficking, any type of criminal activity, that funded NGOs around the world, that brought foreign aid in from the United States into a foreign country and then distributed through their NGOs into their think tanks, that allowed the IMF and World Bank to come in, fund loans out of there, and have all that interest go to the London bankers. All of that whole system is on the verge of collapse. That is the financier arm of the organizations, the NGOs, the NPOs, the think tanks, all of the collaborative organizations that exist above the government aspect of things. So once that collapses, it doesn't matter about those global elites up here and their power and influence. Their network shatters. But see, Donald Trump couldn't just go in and begin arresting the deep state because that system was still in place. But that system is moving away very, very fast. But there's more. So you have what's known as Humphrey's executor. This is the Supreme Court case that's being heard right now. It's Trump versus Slaughter. Can Trump fire the head of the Federal Trade Commission, Slaughter? He's saying, hey, it's Article 2 powers. The government comes out and says, no, well, not really, because it's an independent organization. You really don't have those rights. And Trump says, well, what determines that? And they said, oh, Humphrey's executor versus the United States of America, determined in 1932 by the Supreme Court, says that you can't. And Trump says, well, let's take it to the Supreme Court. And right now, the oral arguments are showing that the Supreme Court is mostly going to align with Donald Trump on this. What does that mean? If the court overturns Humphrey's executor, Trump would gain at will the firing power over the Federal Trade Commissioner, 5 commissions, Securities and Exchange Commission, 5 commissioners, the Federal Communications Commission, 5 commissioners, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, 5 commissioners, the National Labor Relations Board, 5 members, Consumer Product Safety Commission, 5 members, the Federal Election Commission, 6 commissioners, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, 5 commissioners, and the Social Security Administration, commissioners have fixed term, and then the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. And then he'd be able to put whoever he wanted in their place. And then once those people come in their place, they fire the deep state infrastructure. At the same time, this makes it easier for Trump to fire other people in quasi-independent agencies, like the senior executive staff, the SES, the SIGI, the the commander of the inspector generals and the inspector generals throughout all of the departments. It weakens the bureaucratic borders that it put in place that allowed the deep state to come into power. So I want you to see the global alignment of where we are at right now, why all these things are moving the way they are. Europe is collapsing. Mass immigration. So I talked about this the other night. Mass immigration that's occurring in Europe was meant to happen. That was part of their 2030 agenda. The problem was that it was supposed to happen in the United States at the same time, and then they were all supposed to have population decline and collapse in a great pandemic and bring about the Great Reset. The problem is Donald Trump came in 2016. Europe continued on the mission. And now the world's going in a different direction. They're fucked. And on one side, Russia, once they take over Odessa, that means the end of massive European Union and European influence within Eastern Europe, but also throughout all of Europe, because Russia is going to control money supply and energy. Basically, resource allocation goes to Russia within that regional bloc. Out here in the Western Hemisphere, the United States is cutting out China and Russia, removing them from the game table in the Western Hemisphere. Now, what if I told you that in 2018 in Rome, in a secret meeting with various different Trump administration officials and some military personnel, that this was agreed upon by China, Russia, and the United States? That's true. To take down the Euro elite, the European elite, to take down the central bankers, to produce a multipolar world where, look, they said, hey, we can't guarantee we're not going to go to war at some point in the future, but this is what our idea is. Let's create a multipolar world where each one of us begin to focus on a regional homogeny, a regional block of influence and interest. We go out there, we build technological infrastructure, we work together, we go to space together, we build technological infrastructure together, and we try to advance humanity as much as possible. There's going to be disagreements along the way. It's going to happen. That's okay. But we have to lead this world ahead and show other countries how to do it. And we can no longer be undermined by a powerful few elite who seek to rule and control us. I said this from the get-go. China doesn't want to be ruled by Europe. They don't want to be ruled by the global elite. They don't want a global oligarchy that controls what China does. China wants it all. But for China, it's not all or nothing. For China, they understand that, hey, look, we can still do our goals. We can still have our 100-year plan and do what we need to do in this model that is being built out right now. Holy shit, I talk a lot. I didn't even go through any news. Did you notice that? No news for you. No news is good news, right? Holy shit, we're hour and 40 minutes. I guess I had a lot to say. I wasn't even like, I'm just getting started, kind of. Oh, my back hurts. All right, let me go into here real quick. I don't know what this one. Let me see what this one is. Okay. I'm going to play this one right now. Let me go in here. This is a new one. Parents, let's talk about something truly important. At a time when truth, faith, and free speech were under attack, there was one young leader who stood up and said, prove me wrong. That leader was Charlie Kirk, and his message inspired an entire generation. It's why the Kids Guide team created the Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk, to help you share the values he lived by: faith, family, independent thinking, and the courage to stand for truth. He wasn't afraid to say what others were scared to say out loud. His message was simple: don't silence people, debate them, prove me wrong. That spirit of open conversation and respect is something our country desperately needs again. Inside the Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk, your kids will follow Charlie growing up in a Christian household. They'll learn how he spoke up as a teenager, challenged one-sided narratives in school, and launched Turning Point USA from a single card table on a college campus, eventually inspiring millions nationwide. The Kid's Guide to Charlie Kirk presents Charlie not as a flawless figure, but as someone who believed deeply in conversation, critical thinking, the idea that America have far more in common than what divides us. If you want your kids to grow up with strong, unwavering values, start with The Kid's Guide to Charlie Kirk. Visit charliekidsguide.com to order your copy today and give your children the truth and a role model who lived it. That's charliekidsguide.com. And if you're looking for that link, go into Rumble, and that link is going to be posted right there where you guys can see that. Okay. Let me just make sure there was no massively important news. Nope, I think we're good. Okay, guys. I just want to check the chats real quick. 371 likes on Rumble, 1,500 people watching. Come on, guys. Let's get 1,500 likes. Come on, Rumble. Give me those thumbs up. Let's get me trending out there. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for all the support. Remember, a little late show tomorrow, and then the Q&A after the show. Friday night, I am going to be joining Jeff on Conversations on the Fringe. It'll probably be a little bit 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern time show. So that's Friday night, Conversations on the Fringe. We'll be talking about consciousness, AI, all of this stuff. So if you like my conversations where I go on science and technology, optimization theory, all that stuff, pay attention Friday night. It's going to be a great show. Other than that, man, I hope you guys have a great night. There's so much more, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. This was basically the framework for the details, if that makes sense. And there's going to be more to come. I'm publishing a blog on all of this. That's why these things take so long. But much love, respect, guys. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns into silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Voice still calls, we the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil under, patriots rise. We are one, land of the free, home of the brave. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope. sacrifice will not be sold for a life's prize. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, the veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time, the time is near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time. There was a time. Now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!